Mr. Director General, Madam Director General, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends of CIF. 70 years of CIF. I'm 77, so the CIF is younger than I am. It is the time to reflect on what is the role of education and more specifically of formation, because formation is part of the original name of the CIF, Centre International de Formation Européenne. Formation is part of education. In Germany, one might use the word Bildung. It is about a personal and cultural maturation, a self-development that allows people to engage with a broader community. It's very ambitious. And in the case of CIF, it is about formation into true Europeans, European-minded people. That is an intellectual undertaking, but it also involves an existential component, in particular, by studying together with other young people from Europe, living together, traveling together. And therefore, such a formation is unique, not only in one student's life, but in his or her life itself. So it is not merely about the transfer of knowledge, however important, but about the transfer of values. Not to impose them, but to offer them. We are not just individuals. We are part of a larger whole, and Europe belongs to that. In the tradition of personalism, the individual is a being connected in concentric circles around him or her with the family, the neighborhood, friends, associative life, school or work, the people, the country, Europe, and finally the world. Those connections make the individual a person. Personalism, so dear to the founders of the CIF, and particularly to Alexandre Marc, personalism is an underrated philosophy. Today, with the rise of individual and with the rise of collectivization, its relevance is greater than ever. Individualization is ingrained in the market economy with the pursuit of maximum pleasure for consumers and maximum profit for producers, but is also a consequence of the internet world, especially in social media where each individual builds his own little world of preferences and spheres of interest. We miss social capital as a counterweight to so-called social media. That social capital includes all associations between the individual and the state that can contribute to human contact, to dialogue, the basis of a healthy democracy. We see the impact of individualization every day when we look at our fragmented and sometimes torn or even broken societies. When I use the word collectivization, I mean a development in which individuals are caught in all kinds of currents and influences that manipulate their thoughts and feelings, make them anxious and insecure, and cause great stress and frustration because many want to resemble successful role models. We follow the mainstream to such an extent that it becomes impersonal. A personalist vision aims to free the individual from these pressures and constraints and bring him or her to an authentic life where he is free from fear and free to choose for values and ideas that give his life meaning and content. Sigmund Freud once said, "Wo es war, soll ich werden." Where it was, I will become. The impersonal must give way to the personal, in the sense of someone who can take responsibilities, for his or her choices. Freud would be surprised if I turned him into a personalist. Personalism is a movement that is typically European, apart from ideology and religion, even though nations have failed countless times to put it into reality. The collective ego, glorified by nationalism, too often triumphed over the deployment of a personal ego. The European Union is an anti-nationalist movement by definition. Who in Europe today dares to return to the past of wars here or in the colonies? The slogan, "Make Europe Great Again," is fortunately not widely spread here, except among extremists. Education and formation are also the task of schools, from kindergarten to university. How to develop the talents that lie within each of us and how to direct those gifts towards a goal that transcends the individual, such as the European idea. I repeat, I do not want to minimize the skills, the knowledge aspect, especially in European university institutions such as CIFE. Knowledge of the history of Europe or of European thought and institutions, the economy, climate, world politics, etc., also belong to the formation of true Europeans. I would add that knowledge of the European construction should not be limited to those who become specialists in European affairs. Such knowledge should be part of a more general culture. In general, ideas define the future alongside and with ideals, des idées et des idéaux. Many of our students end up in companies and organizations that have Europe as their working domain. Dear friends, I add a reflection as a former economist, long time ago. We should give all students, including our own students, a sense of purpose in seeking to turn their ideas into practical solutions. We can learn a lot from non-European societies and economies, how they turn inventions into concrete innovations. We are lagging behind compared to the US and China. We must give our students also the appetite to become entrepreneurs. And if we fail in this, Europe will become a museum. I come back to the formation of Europeans in schools and especially in secondary education. The foundations of Bildung are often laid there. Personally, I became a convinced European in the humanities through the testimony of teachers and that warmed us up to the European idea, which in the 60s, that's my time as a youngster, was still marked by the hope of peace, of never again war. After all, the Second World War was less than 20 years behind us in the 60s. My school put us in touch with boys. At that time, it was not boys and girls, but only boys. In boys from other Jesuit colleges in Western Europe. We were then still living in the union of the 6 founding members. We undertook a journey together and we came out of it as young people with a broader outlook and with the idea of the European hymn that we are all brothers. Later, the Erasmus program gave 16 million young people the opportunity to study in another country with often a different language. Almost all came out of this experience as European citizens. In the beginning, Erasmus involved mainly university students, but is now open to other courses as well. At our universities of today, the composition of the student population has already changed radically because of internationalization. But Erasmus forces students to integrate in a foreign environment and does not give them the opportunity to retreat into a national cocoon. The internationalization, the Europeanization also occurs at the level of professors and of universities themselves. The latter gather in all kinds of transnational alliances that broaden the outlook of each university, not only academically, but also humanly. It remains unfortunate that British universities are now excluded from this kind of collaboration due to the highly unfortunate decision of the Brexit. European agreements on education reforms have also been concluded although education is too little a competence of the European institutions. Fortunately, it is different in research and development, embodied in our Horizon Europe scientific program, the biggest scientific program in the world. There is Jean Monnet's famous saying that if he were to restart European construction, he would begin with culture. I would restart with education. By the way, the university is a European invention. The European idea is also the age-old dream of writers and poets. It is a dream that came true, by the way. We were born in Europe, but European-minded we must become. What should the Union look like institutionally in the future? I'm too pragmatic in these times of crisis to open distant perspectives on the future or to answer unequivocally whether the Union should become only federal or only confederal. In this difficult phase of history, we must first and foremost preserve institutionally what we have already achieved. I'm thinking of the passport-free Schengen area, which is now under pressure. And secondly, there must be more Europe anyway, not less Europe, more integration and cooperation, as simple as that. The aim is more important than the means to get there. We have seen in recent years how we have strengthened the economic and monetary union, how we now protect our external borders much better with European resources and institutions, how we took initiatives in the COVID era to help those countries hardest hit by the virus, to help them economically with European money raised on the European capital markets. We have seen how we are increasingly cooperating on defense and support to Ukraine, which has been so tragically affected. We should do the same on industrial policy, which Mario Draghi is so begging for. There is so much to do. Europeans themselves are less divided than their leaders. All the Euro barometers prove it. Europe is more popular than the populists think. Besides, nobody wants to leave the Union or the eurozone after the disastrous Brexit. We should also dare to enlarge. Of course, there will be doubters and opponents among the current 27 member states, but a number of countries in the Western Balkans and Eastern Europe want to be part of our family and are willing to fulfill the conditions to do so. We must be as generous as we were in 2004 and 2007, when 100 million Europeans joined us after the fall of communism and the fall of the Soviet Union. We must enlarge Europe. We must make Europe greater. That's a variant of the slogan I just mentioned. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, the CIFE is part of a tradition in the European unification process. It intends to do so for the next 70 years as well. We offer our students good education, adapted to the needs of our time. We will continue to do so with conviction and with enthusiasm. Thank you so much.